The common man believes that knowledge will save him, that the more he learns, the more he will be free. He is told that understanding leads to peace, that insight leads to joy, that wisdom leads to harmony. But these are the fantasies of those who have not yet seen. In truth, the more you know, the more you will suffer. Not because knowledge is wrong, but because it is exact. It strips away illusion. It does not console, it reveals. And what it reveals is not light, but shadow, not comfort, but the abyss. Ask yourself, has any real truth made you happier? Has the knowledge of human nature brought you peace? Has the awareness of time, decay, and death filled your life with ease? Or has it darkened your vision? Has it made laughter more brittle, affection more conditional, existence more absurd? The child laughs because he does not know. The fool smiles because he does not think. But the one who sees clearly, the one who understands the structure beneath the surface, he does not smile. He endures. And this is the fracture I place before you now. The idea that wisdom leads to happiness is a lie. Wisdom leads to clarity, and clarity reveals suffering, not as accident, but as essence. The one who knows cannot hide in dreams. He cannot take refuge in religion or optimism or the promises of love. He sees through them. He watches others build their lives on illusions he has already buried. And though he may remain silent, though he may play the game for appearance's sake, he knows. And because he knows, he suffers. Consciousness is not a gift, it is a burden. The animal is spared the knowledge of death, the weight of purpose, the futility of striving. It eats, it sleeps, it reproduces, it dies, without expectation, without philosophy. But man is cursed with mind. He reflects, he anticipates, he remembers. He builds systems of meaning only to watch them collapse. And each time he begins again, it is not from faith, but from despair. The despair of needing to believe something, anything, in a world that offers no reason beyond continuation. And so I tell you plainly, the more you know, the more you'll suffer. Not because truth is cruel, but because illusion was kind. And now that you have seen through the veil, now that your eyes are open, you must carry what the others cannot. You must walk through life with the weight of knowledge pressing against your chest, without praise, without reward, and without release. You may find moments of relief, yes, a piece of music, a passage of philosophy, the stillness of solitude, but these are not salvation. They are breath taken between drownings. If you are here, if these words reach something in you that cannot be soothed, it is because you have already begun to know. You have felt the shadow behind every success. You have sensed the emptiness at the center of pleasure. You have looked into the eyes of those who love you and seen their desperation reflected in your own. You have begun to suffer not from the world, but from your insight into it. This suffering is not weakness, it is awakening. Do not wish it away. Do not seek to be consoled. Let it sharpen you, let it silence you, let it burn away every remaining illusion. Only then will you understand what it means to truly know, and why so few endure it. You were not meant to know. None of us were. Consciousness, that celebrated pinnacle of evolution, is in truth nature's cruelest accident. The beast eats, sleeps, mates, and dies, all without knowledge of its own condition. It feels, yes, but it does not understand. It fears pain, but it does not anticipate it. It flees danger, but it does not fear the future. It suffers, but only in the moment. Man, however, man suffers in every direction. He remembers pain, imagines it, forecasts it, and prolongs it through reflection. And this is the price of thought. The moment self-awareness appeared, paradise ended. You believe that awareness enriches life, that to see more is to live more, but what you are truly doing is witnessing with increasing sharpness the bleak architecture of existence. Consciousness reveals not beauty but fragility. It shows you that behind every smile is death, behind every triumph is decay, and behind every desire is the certainty of its own disappointment. The animal does not know it will die. But you cannot forget it. And so you live haunted by the inevitable, while pretending day by day that life still offers something worth grasping. To think deeply is to suffer deeply, not because the world becomes worse, but because its veil is lifted. The ceremonies of life, ambition, romance, celebration, appear increasingly absurd, not because they are false in function, but because they rely on ignorance to feel meaningful. The more you understand the will, that blind, insatiable force that governs all existence, the more you see yourself as its puppet. You may play the part of a lover, a friend, a worker, a thinker, but always beneath it all is the same machinery, grinding forward, using you as it used the generations before and will use those that come after. And so I say again, consciousness is not a gift. It is the infection of insight into a system that does not welcome reflection. It is the tragic mutation that allowed the will to become aware of its own futility, and yet continue anyway. For even in knowing the horror, we still move. We still eat, desire, reproduce. We still wake to a world that promises nothing and takes everything, yet compels us to go on. That is the torment of the conscious being, not only that he suffers, but that he cannot stop wanting. The more awake you become, the more unbearable this contradiction grows. You see the loop, and yet you walk it. You see the emptiness, and yet you cling. You understand the absence of meaning, and yet you search for it in symbols, in rituals, in people. You do not do this because you are foolish, but because you are alive, and the will does not release its servants easily, even when they see through its lies. This, then, is the sorrow of thought, that to know what is true is to feel what cannot be changed. The animal suffers, but it does not despair. Only man is cursed with despair. And it is this despair, not joy, not reason, that marks our superiority. We are not the highest creatures because we reason. We are the most tormented because we know that we reason in vain. Desire is the chain that binds all living beings to the wheel of suffering. The ignorant chase it with hope. The clever chase it with strategy. But only the truly conscious see it for what it is, a trick played by the will, a fire that consumes without ever warming. You do not desire because you are lacking. You are lacking because you desire. The moment desire arises, suffering begins. And yet, from birth until death, you are told that fulfillment lies in satisfying your wants. That happiness will come if you can only have, become, or achieve something more. But the more you pursue, the more you confirm your enslavement. This is the torment of knowledge. It unmasks desire. It shows you the hollowness behind every craving. You reach for success, and when you grasp it, it fades. You pursue love, and when it arrives, it disappoints or disappears. You strive for peace, but the moment you have it, a new hunger arises to shatter it, and so your life becomes a cycle, not of fulfillment, but of friction. The ignorant man calls this the human experience. The conscious man calls it what it is, a sickness with no cure. I do not say this to induce despair, I say it to clarify. Because only when you see desire for what it is can you begin to loosen its grip. And what is it? The voice of the will, whispering through the body, through the instincts, through the intellect. It promises pleasure, but its true purpose is continuity. It keeps you moving, not toward peace, but toward reproduction, toward motion, toward more. It never wants you satisfied, it only wants you active. For the moment you are content, you stop. And the will cannot allow that. Every great agony of your life has come from wanting. Wanting someone who left. Wanting something you lost. Wanting to be someone you could not become. Desire inflates the illusion of significance. It convinces you that if you had the object, the person, the role, the result, then the restlessness would end. But the truth is this. Desire does not aim at peace. It aims at replacement. When one longing is satisfied, another arises. You are not ascending. You are circling. Trapped in the carousel of the will, wearing the mask of agency while being driven by compulsion. To see this clearly is not to stop the suffering immediately. The will does not die with knowledge. It resists extinction. But awareness allows you to no longer be deceived. You may still want, but you no longer mistake wanting for meaning. You may still pursue, but you know that what lies at the end is not joy, but the beginning of a new craving. And in this quiet detachment, there is a subtle dignity. You no longer plead with the world. You observe it. You no longer believe in salvation through satisfaction. You recognize salvation in stillness. There will always be another voice, another image, another promise. The will continue to whisper. But you, if you have truly seen, may begin to stop listening. You may sit in the fire of unsatisfied longing and not flinch. You may feel the hunger and not obey it. And in that refusal there is a strength unknown to the strivers, a strength that does not conquer but endures, a strength born not of having but of understanding, the strength of one who no longer mistakes movement for purpose. The beast walks in the forest unaware that it will die. It fears pain, yes. It flees when wounded, it growls when cornered, but it does not anticipate the void. It does not sit beneath the stars and contemplate its vanishing. It does not bury its dead with symbols or weep for what will soon decay. In this way, the animal is spared. But man is not. Man sees death not merely as an end, but as a shadow stretched across every moment of life. He does not live in time. He suffers it. And this suffering is sharpened by thought, made longer by memory, made unbearable by anticipation. You think of death as something distant, an event to be faced at the end. But in truth, it is with you always. Every moment you enjoy, death is there to interrupt it. Every attachment you form, death prepares to sever it. Every breath you take brings you closer, not farther, from dissolution. And the more you know, the more vividly you see this. Death is not an idea, it is the atmosphere of conscious life. You do not escape it by avoiding the grave. You carry it within you like a silent companion, whispering beneath every joy, "This too will end." The ignorant live lightly because they do not see the finitude of things. They laugh without dread. They make plans as if time were endless. They build and love as if the foundation cannot be broken. But the awakened mind sees the fracture before the structure has fallen. He sees the corpse within the lover, the ruin within the kingdom, the loss within the gain. He knows that everything he holds will be taken, that no matter how tightly he grips, time will open his hand. And so he suffers, not more, but earlier, not deeper in pain, but broader in awareness. He mourns before the loss, weeps before the wound, feels the hollow while the vessel is still full. His joy is thinned by understanding. His peace is disturbed by foresight. And yet this is not weakness. This is vision. For to know death is not to collapse beneath it. It is to cease expecting the world to give what it cannot. What then shall the conscious man do with this awareness? Shall he curse it? Shall he distract himself with pleasures, drown himself in motion, blind himself with belief? Many do. Most do. But you, if you are still listening, are not most. You carry the weight. You feel the sorrow. And you refuse to lie to yourself. You know that every embrace is already a goodbye. That every conversation may be the last. That nothing you build will last and nothing you love will remain. And in that knowing, you do not become empty, you become exact. For the awareness of death does not destroy meaning. It dissolves illusion. And in the ruins of that illusion, a new kind of life may begin. A life not of grasping, but of presence, not of clinging, but of witnessing. You no longer chase permanence. You no longer demand that joy last. You simply walk, breath by breath, with death at your side, not as enemy, not as punishment, but as proof that you have seen. The more you know, the more alone you become. Not because others vanish, but because you no longer speak their language. What once passed for conversation now feels like theater. What once connected you now separates you. You hear the joy in their voices, but you see the fear behind their eyes. You watch them chase, hope, believe, and you do not join them. Not because you are above them, but because you can no longer pretend. Knowledge does not elevate, it isolates. This is the cruel result of consciousness. Clarity costs communion. You begin to see what others avoid. You speak of impermanence, and they accuse you of darkness. You speak of suffering, and they call you cynical. You speak of illusion, and they ask why you cannot simply enjoy life. But how can you enjoy what you have seen through? How can you return to dreams once you've awakened? They do not understand that your silence is not bitterness, it is mercy. You do not burden them with what you carry because you know they are not ready to hold it. And so you become distant, not physically but inwardly. You are in the room but not of it. You smile, but your smile is hollow. You nod, but your thoughts are elsewhere. They celebrate and you observe. They plan and you calculate the decay already built into the future. They love and you see the ending before the beginning has even ripened. You are not unmoved. You are too moved. Moved by the fragility of it all. Moved by the blindness that allows them to keep living without despair. This is the solitude of the awakened mind. It is not romantic. It is not noble. It is heavy. For you long to be understood, but to be understood would require another to suffer what you have suffered. And so you learn to let go of that longing. You learn to speak less, to explain less, to meet the world with a kind of inward retreat. They do not know why you seem distant, why your eyes are quiet, why your laughter is slow to rise. But you know. You know that once you begin to see, it becomes harder to belong. Even among the intelligent, the isolation remains. Intelligence does not guarantee awareness. Many clever minds remain in service to illusion, refining it, defending it, profiting from it. But the truly aware do not use knowledge to decorate the world. They use it to reveal its bones. And what they find there is not beauty but structure, not meaning but pattern. And pattern, once seen, dulls the drama of the individual moment. You may wonder if this loneliness will ever end. It will not in the way you hope, but it may transform, from grief into stillness, from ache into understanding. You will begin to cherish your distance not as exile but as freedom. You will no longer expect to be mirrored. You will no longer search for someone to walk beside you in full recognition. You will walk alone, not because you must, but because it is the only path wide enough for truth. This is not despair. It is a quieter kind of dignity, the dignity of the one who no longer lies, the one who carries his solitude not as a wound, but as a shield. For in that solitude you are no longer moved by the same illusions, and though the silence may be vast, it is finally your own. The more you understand, the more you suffer, not only for yourself but for others. There is a sorrow that belongs only to those who see. It is the sorrow of watching the blind stumble, the hopeful collapse, the innocent walk into fire with smiles on their faces. You want to warn them, but you cannot, for even if you spoke, they would not listen. Their illusions are not mistakes, they are shields. And to shatter those shields would not free them, it would destroy them, so you remain silent. You observe, and in that silence your suffering deepens. It is not pity you feel, pity is a posture. What you feel is recognition. You see in their longing your former self. You watch them believe in love, in legacy, in redemption, and you remember when you did too. You watch them beg to be needed, to be chosen, to be seen, and you remember the pain that followed. And yet they must pass through it. There is no wisdom without wounding. There is no clarity without collapse. You cannot carry them past their illusions. You can only bear witness as they fall. This is the cruelty of compassion when married to knowledge. You no longer live only your own pain, you live theirs too. You hear the joy in their voice and already feel the grief that will follow it. You see the beginning of their romance and already sense its decay. You see their ambition ignite and already know the ashes. You cannot tell them. They are not ready. They must believe in what you have buried. And so you suffer for them, not in theory, but in anticipation. Most suffering in this world is unconscious. It is endured without understanding. But the conscious man suffers with full awareness. He sees the causes, he sees the futility, he sees the inevitable repetition. And because of this, his suffering carries a weight unknown to the distracted. He weeps not only for what happens, but for why it must happen. Not just for what is lost, but for what was never real. There is no escape from this form of pain. No belief can soften it. No distraction can erase it. But there is a refinement in it, a purification. For this compassion is not sentimental, it is metaphysical. You do not suffer because you are good. You suffer because you see. And the more clearly you see, the more your heart breaks. Not out of weakness, but out of awareness. Not because you feel too much, but because you understand too much. This kind of suffering is not loud. It is not theatrical. It is not shared in public or performed for pity. It is quiet like falling snow. It accumulates in silence, and it isolates you from the world that still believes. But this suffering is not meaningless. It is the cost of vision. It is the price of stepping beyond illusion. And if you can endure it, if you can hold it without bitterness, you will begin to carry a different kind of presence. One that speaks without speaking. One that offers no comfort but invites truth. A presence that suffers not just for the self but for the whole of willing existence. And in that suffering, there is a strange, severe kind of love. Not a love that wants to change the world, but one that understands why it cannot be changed. There comes a moment, if one dares to think deeply, see clearly, and feel fully, when meaning itself begins to dissolve. Not because one chooses nihilism, but because illusion can no longer be sustained. All the structures you once clung to, religion, morality, progress, romance, begin to tremble under the weight of your own awareness. Not suddenly, but slowly, like ice cracking beneath your feet. You test each step, hoping the old assurances still hold. But eventually they do not. And in that collapse, something irreversible happens. You awaken to a world no longer dressed in comfort. You once believed that life had purpose, that suffering meant something, that love would redeem the struggle, that effort would be rewarded, that pain had a place in some greater plan. But these beliefs, examined carefully, reveal themselves as scaffolding, not truths, but supports. And the more you look, the more you see that they were not placed there by nature, but by the desperate minds of men, each afraid to live without story. The world is not built on meaning. It is built on function, and you were taught to confuse the two. Religion was your first shelter. It told you that suffering had value, that life had direction, that an eye watched you even in the dark. But when your suffering deepened and the heavens remained silent, you looked up and saw not order but indifference. Then came morality. It whispered that goodness would be rewarded, that justice governed the world. But you watched the cruel rise, the kind perish, and you could no longer believe. Then came love. You believed it would save you. But it too cracked under scrutiny. You saw that what you called love was often need, possession, projection, and meaning began to bleed out. What is left when meaning dies? Not despair as many fear, but a kind of nakedness. You stand before life without shield, without script. It does not speak to you. It does not hate you. It simply is. And you, who were once a believer in stories, must now learn to breathe in a world that offers none. This is not easy. The mind rebels. It longs to rebuild. It begs for narrative. But if you resist the urge to reassemble illusion, if you remain in this stark silence, something else may emerge. Not new meaning, but new perception. You begin to see that the collapse was necessary. That meaning, as it was taught to you, was a sedative, a tranquilizer administered by culture to keep you moving, to keep you hoping, to keep you useful. And now that it is gone, you are free, not joyous, but honest. You see that life is not a journey, but a current. That suffering is not a test, but a consequence. That happiness is not a destination, but a brief cessation. And in this clarity, you do not become less human. You become more aware of what being human has always truly meant. So do not fear the collapse. It is not the end. It is the beginning of a different kind of life, a life without illusion, a life without borrowed meaning, a life where you no longer demand that the world reassure you. You simply walk, eyes open, no longer searching for signs. In a world stripped of meaning, there remain few refuges. But one of them, brief, fragile, and wordless, is beauty. Not the kind manufactured by desire or market, not the beauty of seduction or success, but the kind that arrests the will. A piece of music, a shaft of light on an empty floor, a tree bending in silence. In such moments the will pauses. The longing, the striving, the endless hunger, all of it recedes. And what remains is not fulfillment but freedom. For a breath you are no longer the creature clawing through life, you are only the witness. This is the power of aesthetic experience, not that it comforts but that it suspends. It does not fix what is broken, it simply allows you for a time to step outside the machinery. You are not bettered by beauty, you are negated. You no longer desire because you no longer feel yourself as the one who desires. The subject and object dissolve. The world stands still, and in that stillness, something like peace appears. Not the peace of answers, but the peace of absence. Art, when it is true, does not flatter the will. It defies it. The true artist is not a promoter of hope. He is a saboteur of illusion. His task is not to beautify life, but to reveal it, to pull back the veil with elegance, to show the horror with such precision that the will falters. This is why tragedy is higher than comedy. Why a requiem contains more truth than a victory march. Because in sorrow rendered with clarity, the will is momentarily stunned. It cannot justify itself, it cannot disguise itself, it simply stops. Music above all has this power, for it speaks without language. It does not explain, it embodies. It does not remind you of what you want, it reminds you that you are and that being is strange. Melancholy music especially does not make you sad. It tunes you to the sadness already present in the structure of existence. And in recognizing that sadness, in feeling it without resistance, you are lifted, not into joy, but into understanding. These moments do not last. They cannot. The will returns, the hunger stirs, the world rushes back with its demands. But something within you has changed. You have tasted a silence deeper than contentment. You have glimpsed, however briefly, what it means to exist without striving. And now, when the noise resumes, you are not as easily deceived. You remember the pause. You know that behind the screaming surface lies a still core. You may not always reach it, but you no longer forget it exists. Beauty, then, is not luxury. It is resistance. In a life driven by the compulsion to want, beauty teaches you how to want nothing. And in that moment, you are no longer a prisoner of the will. You are its interruption. You do not need to chase peace. You need only to see without craving, to listen without reaching, to stand before the world, no longer asking it to save you. When the illusions collapse, when desire is unmasked, when suffering no longer surprises you and meaning no longer holds you, the mind looks for a final posture. Some collapse into despair. Others return to distraction. But there is another path, narrower, lonelier, but dignified. It is the path of detachment. Not apathy, not numbness, but a quiet refusal to participate in the dream. A life lived not in denial of the will, but in conscious distance from it. To detach is not to renounce life, but to stop being entangled in its endless becoming. The detached man still walks, still breathes, still speaks, but he no longer burns with the need to become something. He no longer asks the world to reflect his worth. He does not chase recognition because he sees that it changes nothing. He does not fear rejection because he no longer believes that being chosen matters. He does not search for fulfillment because he knows that all fulfillment is fleeting. Instead, he observes. He endures. And in this endurance, he finds a strength that striving never delivered. The world will call him distant, cold, arrogant, but this is because they do not understand the kind of fire he has walked through. He has seen what desire does. He has watched hope rot into regret. He has witnessed the cycle of hunger too many times to still believe that another spin will yield salvation. He no longer expects joy. He no longer pleads for justice. He no longer waits to be understood. He is not against life. He simply no longer worships it. Detachment is not the enemy of compassion. It is its foundation. The detached man is not untouched by suffering. He is simply no longer surprised by it. He can hold another's pain without flinching. He can love without clinging, give without expectation, speak without needing to be heard. His presence does not demand attention. It offers stillness. He is no longer reactive, he is reflective. And this makes him both invisible to the world and indispensable to those who suffer in silence. Do not confuse detachment with bitterness. Bitterness is the cry of a man who still wants. The detached man no longer wants. He sees, he accepts. He does not fight the current, nor does he indulge it. He simply lets it pass. This is not resignation, it is resolve. A resolve to live honestly without illusion and without complaint. A resolve to stop asking life to be what it cannot be, and to bear what it is with grace. This is the final strength, not to change the world, not to conquer it, but to no longer be ruled by it, to live in the midst of the will and not obey it, to carry sorrow without collapse, to carry knowledge without boasting, to carry solitude without needing it to end. This is the dignity of detachment, the strength of one who has stepped outside the storm, not untouched but unmoved. You have seen enough, not in years but in depth. You have followed desire to its hollow center. You have watched love fade, joy fracture, hope collapse. You have learned that knowledge does not console, it disturbs. And yet, you are still here. You have not returned to illusion. You have not retreated into distraction. You sit in this quiet clarity, carrying the weight of truth like an old coat, uncomfortable but familiar. You no longer ask the world to feel lighter. You simply learn to carry it more skillfully. Renunciation begins here, not as a performance, not as a doctrine, but as a lived posture. You no longer chase the illusions others call meaning. You do not pray to be spared suffering, nor do you seek to extend pleasure. You walk with both, aware of their rhythm but no longer bound to either. This is not indifference, it is purification. The mind becomes simple again, not dull but calm. You speak less, you need less, you expect less. And in that lessness there is more peace than all striving ever offered. You have not become enlightened. You have simply stopped believing. You do not need to transcend the world. You only need to stop asking it for what it cannot give. Your detachment is not withdrawal, it is understanding. You are not angry that the world is flawed. You are clear that it could not be otherwise. And this clarity, though it costs everything, gives you back your life, not the one you imagined, but the one that was always real beneath the dream. If you have walked with me through this, if you have felt your illusions tremble, your stories unravel, your hopes go silent, then perhaps you are ready. Ready not for answers, but for stillness. Not for joy, but for understanding. And in that understanding there is no need to be extraordinary. No need to be saved. Only the quiet resolve to live with open eyes and an unburdened heart. If these words have not frightened you, if they have met you where you already stand, then remain. Subscribe, not to be entertained, but to remember. And in the comments, tell me, what was the moment you realized that the more you knew, the more you would suffer? Not so that others will praise you, but so that someone else, also carrying this burden, might feel less alone in the dark.